Uh, I am really pleased to be here this morning and honored to be joined by Robert Lawler, Jr., who is the Drug Intelligence Officer of the New England High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, and Rick Fontana, the Deputy Director of New Haven Emergency Operations, as well as New Haven Police Department Assistant Chief Rachel Kane. And they're going to be speaking in that order. Mr. Lawler, Deputy Director Fontana, and Chief Kane after I do. We were here literally just a couple of months ago when more than 100 people overdosed on the New Haven Green. It was reported nationally. It made the national headlines. And it was one of the reasons that we organized a meeting with then Acting Director Jim Carroll of the National Drug Control Policy Office, and why I championed a measure as part of an omnibus opioids bill that was passed on Wednesday of this past week. Now, obviously, the news was mostly about Judge Kavanaugh becoming confirmed, as happened on Saturday. But on Wednesday, the United States Senate approved a sweeping opioids bill with $1.5 billion for treatment that will provide millions to Connecticut, a drug take-back program that will enable more people to rid their medicine cabinets of powerful painkillers that lead to addiction, best practices and standards for sober houses, recovery coaches, support for a wide array of measures. As a first step, it's by no means a final panacea, but we have made a start toward stopping the opioid epidemic in this country. And a critical piece and element of that program is a crackdown on imports of synthetic opioids to this country. If you recall, I highlighted the dangers of fentanyl and K2 coming from Mexico and China. They are the countries that export fentanyl and K2 and other synthetic opioids to this country. And part of the sweeping opioid bill passed last Wednesday will be a monitoring and surveillance system to collect electronic information. The United States Postal Service must now collect electronic information about packages coming to this country from all over the world, where they're coming from and where they're going to, who is receiving them and who sent them, so that it can intercept and stop imports of fentanyl and K2, such as cause those overdoses on the New Haven Green. The United States Postal Service now has not only the tools, it has the mandate. It must impose this electronic monitoring system so that customs officials can open those packages and stop the imports of fentanyl and K2, such as caused the overdoses here. That's a major step. A major step towards stopping imports of K2 and fentanyl is to monitor the shipments, open them, crack down, stop them from coming into this country. And I'm proud that New Haven helped to provide the impetus for this measure, gave me the evidence that was important to advocating for this crackdown. It may seem like a small step, but it has major implications for law enforcement. It provides tools, but also the mandate, the absolute requirement that the United States Postal Service now must do its part to intercept, monitor, crack down, enable customs officials to stop these imports of the very synthetic opioids that caused those overdoses here on the New Haven Green. So I want to thank the law enforcement officials who helped in this process. As you know, the New Haven first responders and police really were magnificent in their response to this very unfortunate incident. The mayor is to be commended, and the New Haven police, and they have helped immeasurably not only the state of Connecticut but the nation in this effort. And with that, I would like to call on Robert Lawler, the Drug Intelligence Officer for the New England High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area.
Good morning. I would just like to thank the Senator for being a champion of this fantastic bill. The Senator has always been a champion of our efforts here in Connecticut. Every meeting or conference I go to, the Senator or somebody from his staff is there pushing the problems we have in Connecticut with the opioids and trying to be a problem solver in this issue. And I would like to thank the City of New Haven, Mayor Harp, Chief Campbell, Assistant Chief Kane, and Director Fontana for being a great partner to New England HIDTA and helping us with our work here in Connecticut and New Haven. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Hi, good morning, and thank you to our hands-on Senator, who always is first and foremost coming to the city to lead the effort with many bills that take care of so many folks. But what I do want to say is this is an opportunity for me to thank the first responders. That includes the New Haven Police Department, the New Haven Fire Department, American Medical Response, and all of our partners that were here on the 14th and 15th of August. As you know, we had 114 transports of individuals who did engage in using what we call street drugs, synthetic K2, synthetic cannabis. And again, I think the important thing here is Senator Blumenthal answered our call. We have been having a difficult time in funding Narcan for first responders. The costs are really creating a damper on budgets for all first responders. And again, this is on the fire side, on the American Medical Response side. And for that to happen, and for us to get funding to purchase Narcan, is going to save lives. And it's not just for first responders, it's going to be in hospitals, at community health care centers, and those are the important individuals that make a difference here in the city of New Haven. So again, Senator Blumenthal, thank you for your hard work in passing this bill, and I know that we all look forward to your continued hard work in the Senate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. And I need to thank Senator Blumenthal. He's always been a partner of the New Haven Police law enforcement, actually law enforcement throughout Connecticut. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
As you all know, the nation is in the midst of an unprecedented opioid epidemic. Addiction to opioids is not limited to any one community or demographic. It affects us all. And we saw that 2 months ago here on the Green. Though addiction is a public health matter, it often involves crimes and quality of life issues. And for that matter, it includes the sale and distribution of illegal and often lethal drugs. Our officers and detectives are committed to bringing justice to those who poison members of our community. Addiction isn't limited to the people using just the illegal opioids like heroin. Misuse of prescription opioids is a huge part of the epidemic. Misuse includes people with a prescription not taking it as prescribed, and people without a prescription taking pills from the family medicine cabinet, friends, complete strangers at parties, and often people out here pushing pills on the street. The fact is that only someone willing and eager to get clean will ever actually stay clean for an appreciable amount of time. Thanks to Senator Blumenthal's efforts, law enforcement will now get the much-needed funding to increase our efforts in arresting those who prey on the vulnerable and to expand programs like the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program, which helps those struggling with drug addiction to get the resources and support they need to get and stay clean. Thank you again, Senator Blumenthal, for all of your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Happy to take any questions or direct them to my colleagues here.
Have there been any outbreaks? I mean, not 114 transports, but have you seen the same K2, the same strain come back at all in the weeks after?
No, we have not. We still have, of course, we still do have K2 overdoses throughout the city of New Haven. Then again, this was really segregated here on the green. We have not seen anything like that. We believe that law enforcement has done an excellent job in getting that strain off the streets. So yes.
Have federal or local law enforcement able to determine where that bad batch came from? Was it imported from a foreign country into New Haven? Do we know where that bad batch came from?
I'd have to divert that to my colleague for that information. I'm sorry, I don't have that.
Unfortunately, the Drug Enforcement Administration is still working on that case, so I'm not allowed to discuss that. So.
Could you give us an idea, Mr. Lawler, of the extent of trafficking through the U.S. mails?
An extent. A lot of narcotics that come into this country come in through parcel services, whether the post office or other freight carriers. It's not the majority of narcotics that come into the country, but it is significant, and it is increasing.
Mr. Lawler, in general, could you just explain how this legislation will help you do your job better?
Well, it's really for our partners on the law enforcement front and in the Postal Service and in the Drug Administration, Drug Enforcement Administration. It allows them the funds and the resources to do better, more complex investigations, and that's really how it's going to help us.
Let me just go over exactly what the law requires. And I apologize for repeating, but let me just try to make it as simple as possible. Right now, the United States Postal Service is under no mandate or requirement to screen or do any sort of electronic information collection about where packages are coming from, where they're going, who's sending them, who's receiving them. That's a major gap, because literally a drug manufacturer in Mexico or China can send a package by the U.S. Postal Service into this country without any electronic collection of that information. And so the customs inspectors can't intercept it. This law requires the United States Postal Service to electronically collect information about the flow of packages, where they're coming from, where they're going, who's receiving them, and who is sending them. That will trigger monitoring and interception by the customs officials of packages that may collect and contain contraband, such as fentanyl, K2, and as Mr. Lawler says, it is a significant part of the drugs coming into this country. There's no definitive finding as to the K2 that caused those overdoses on the New Haven Green, but there are a lot of signs that point to China or Mexico as the source. And we can't go farther than that at this point, but if not here, all around the country, there is absolute proof that China and Mexico are a source, increasingly so, of the contraband coming into this country. And so this measure is important, but I really want to emphasize what Deputy Director Fontana said. The bill also provides for more Narcan. It provides for more treatment. We are not going to arrest our way out of this epidemic. Treatment is absolutely necessary, so $1.5 billion, a start, not a panacea, will be provided for treatment, for recovery coaches, for medicine assisted treatment. These are all important measures, and it is a comprehensive approach that's in this bill. We're here on the New Haven Green to talk about one part of it, or emphasize one part of it, but please understand that it is a comprehensive approach, providing for better sober houses, as well as drug take-back programs, so medicine cabinets are rid of these powerful painkillers after they're no longer necessary. But this new bill providing for U.S. Postal Service track and trace, that will help stop the importing of contraband like fentanyl, K2, other synthetic opioids.
FedEx, CPS,
they're already subject to the mandate.
Okay.
Only the U.S. Postal Service has no mandate.
Got it. I know that there's a lot of talk about Narcan prices always going up and up. Is there anything done in this legislation to put some caps on that if it's controversial?
Very good question. The answer, unfortunately, is no. There'll be more money provided for funding, but nothing to prevent the rise in prices in Narcan or naloxone. And that has been, as you know, a complaint of mine. I believe that there needs to be an investigation of the rising, skyrocketing Narcan prices, which are burdening our police departments, our fire departments, emergency responders, hospitals, and it is the result of lack of sufficient production. I have Narcan in my car right now. I'm trained to administer the Narcan I have in my car. It's a very easy training process. I think the more people who have it, the more people who know how to use it, the more available it is, the more lives we're going to save. So that's an important point.
How high of a priority is it to create opportunities for people who have been arrested in order to get housing and jobs and other opportunities?
Well, another really good question. You know, as part of treatment, there has to be a whole of government response to this epidemic of opioid abuse and addiction. And that includes not just medicine-assisted treatment and counseling and therapy. It also has to include jobs, housing, all of the services that New Haven is doing, by the way. New Haven, again, is at the forefront of this effort, thanks to Mayor Harp and the New Haven Police Department, our judicial system. But that's an approach that needs to be expanded, and it is not addressed in this bill, but it needs to be addressed as part of a comprehensive approach to these social services.
Senator, just a little bit off topic, just with the vote on Saturday. Just your reaction for how everything turned out here and what you expect going forward.
Well, I'm happy to take questions on Kavanaugh if we're done on opioids.
Is there anything more that you want from this bill? Anything that was left out or?
Well, I would say, first and foremost, more funding for treatment and counseling, therapy, as well as all of the social services. And possibly more restrictions on prescriptions of powerful painkillers, more guidelines and better practices so that we can help prevent addiction and abuse. And more education in our schools, including some of the medical schools of the country for our docs. and more transparency in the marketing practices of the manufacturers of these powerful painkillers. Less marketing, direct marketing to consumers. So there are many, many other measures that have to be taken. More support for law enforcement. These guys who are on the streets, who are confronting this problem in the trenches, they need more support as well. And we need more support for drug courts. There's a panoply of measures. We're really just beginning with this measure. And I just want to emphasize bipartisan support. This measure passed 98-1. Strong bipartisan support, strong working together across the aisle. So I'm hopeful that we can move forward, which in a way is a segue, George, to your point. I will tell you that last Saturday was the saddest and angriest day of my time in the United States Senate. Republicans succeeded in confirming a deeply flawed, dangerous nominee to the United States Supreme Court only by breaking all of the norms and rules. The fight was deeply partisan, and Republicans, in effect, shattered the rules and norms. The damage, I fear, will be enduring to the court and to the country. What we have now is one party in control of all three branches of government, which is dangerous. And I think voters are going to be energized because they want checks and balances. That's the way our system works. We're in danger of lacking the checks and balances that are vital to our democratic system. And particularly on the judiciary, the Republican majority is remaking our judicial branch in the image of the far right of the Republican Party. It fails to reflect the will of the people. If our judiciary reflects only a fifth of our nation in its views, it will be dangerous. So going forward, we need the American people to express at the polls their view that we need checks and balances, which I hope will be their view.
Did the Democrats contribute to any of this partisanship in this debate? Did your side go too far, or members of your side go too far on occasion?
What we saw really was facts and evidence about this nominee. Very serious and credible allegations were made about his potential sexual assault. The lack of a full, fair investigation will forever cloud his service on the United States Supreme Court. He will go to the court with an asterisk next to his name, just as athletes on the record books have asterisks next to their names. And I believe that the anguish and anger of survivors and loved ones of survivors remains very vivid and real. There was a teaching moment here in the powerful courage and credible testimony of Christine Blasey Ford, which riveted the nation, and I hope her courage will really enable us and empower and force us to heed and hear survivors of sexual assault and avoid the public shaming and character assassination that all too often has discouraged them and silenced them.
What are the implications for the United States Senate? You talked about the court, you talked about the country. What, in the Senate, what's it going to be like? I mean, what do you foresee the fallout from this? Will Democrats and Republicans be even more partisan? Will people be retreating more into their partisan corners?
Well, we're here about a bill that passed overwhelmingly with bipartisan support after a lot of work by myself and other Democrats and Republicans. These bills continue to go forward. The FAA reauthorization passed on the same day, provides better consumer protection for airline passengers as a result of, again, measures that I worked with my colleagues across the aisle. This work goes on because the American people want us to do our job. But at the same time, the American people need to recognize that now one party controls all three branches. And I think they'll be energized to make some changes.
Do you not want Democrats to control all three branches?
I think we need checks and balances. And that's
no.
what the American people want. I think there is a danger in any one party in control of all three branches of government, and particularly on the Supreme Court of the United States, where not just a party, but the far right wing of that party, an extreme ideological segment, which was the reason I opposed this nominee from the start. I opposed this nominee before there were any allegations of sexual assault, because he would eliminate the rights of women to decide when they want to become pregnant, or people to decide whom they want to marry. Healthcare is now at risk because protections for the millions of Americans who suffer from diabetes and heart disease and blood pressure, high blood pressure, are now potentially at risk. Healthcare is on the chopping block constitutionally.
So you said that you think Republicans have gained all this control by violating norms. Is it important for Democrats to continue to follow norms if Republicans are given power?
Well, in about 30 days, we're going to have an election, and that's when the system can be righted.
Senator, in terms, does the investigation into Kavanaugh continue? And if you find that he did lie under oath, or that any more of these allegations, more evidence comes out, is there any avenue at that point that the Senate would be able to step in? Is there impeachment possibilities? Right?
You know, the investigation, let me put it this way, these documents that were concealed, 6 million pages of documents, will come out as a result of the Freedom of Information Act lawsuit that I filed. There needs to be an investigation into why the FBI failed to do a full investigation. Who limited the witnesses who were interviewed? Who imposed those straitjackets on this investigation? There needs to be an investigation of why that investigation was so curtailed. And I think eventually the facts and evidence will come out. So I think there is a need for continuing full disclosure of the facts and evidence.
So who would do that investigation? Which chamber would it start? Both chambers? I'm just wondering.
Well, it could be the Judiciary Committee of the United States Senate or of the House of Representatives, but we're talking about why the investigation of Judge Kavanaugh's alleged sexual assault was so limited, why there were only a limited number of witnesses.
Yeah, but eventually, aren't you also talking about possible impeachment? I mean, isn't that, if someone lied during their confirmation hearing, a sitting federal judge lied during the confirmation hearing, wouldn't that be considered possible grounds for impeachment? I'm not a legal scholar.
Well, I think what we face right now is, in 30 days, an election that hopefully will make some changes. And the facts and evidence will come out. And what the consequences will be depends on judgments about what that facts and evidence show.
Senator, President Trump brought you up again at a rally. You've been certainly the focus of a lot of tweets. What's your reaction when he comes on that strong? I mean, do you guys get an influx of calls? I mean, what is, do do you expect that it will continue with you and him here over the remainder of his term?
Well, you know, all I can say is, there he goes again. These comments are so false and ludicrous, they're not even worth answering. And they certainly won't silence or distract me.
Did you have a relationship with him before he became president?
You know, that's really all I'm going to say. Anything else? Thanks, everyone.